The restaurant buzzed with quiet chatter and the occasional clink of glasses as I pushed through the double doors. The faint scent of roasted lamb and truffle oil hung in the air, mingling with the low hum of conversation. It was supposed to be a special evening, our 31st wedding anniversary. I had dressed for the occasion, wearing the suit Elaine had bought me years ago. I should have been excited, but there was a strange tension in the pit of my stomach, a feeling I couldn't shake. "Dad, over here!" My youngest, Juniper, called out from a private room on the right. Her voice cut through the ambience, drawing my attention. I adjusted my tie and headed in her direction. As I stepped inside, I froze. Seated around the table were Elaine, our 4 children, and Henry, my best friend. The sight of him sitting there felt like a punch to the gut. His presence alone was out of place, but the casual way he leaned back in his chair, one arm draped over the backrest like he belonged, set off alarm bells. Elaine looked up and gave me a smile. It wasn't the warm, loving smile I was used to. It was sharp, almost smug. "Took you long enough," she said, raising her glass in mock acknowledgement. I forced a smile and nodded. "Traffic," I replied curtly, sliding into the empty chair next to her. My eyes flicked to Henry, who avoided my gaze, shifting in his seat. The kids sat silently, their expressions ranging from nervous to confused. It wasn't the lively family atmosphere I had envisioned for tonight. Elaine swirled the wine in her glass, watching it like it held all the answers. "No need to rush," she said, her voice smooth but carrying an undertone I couldn't quite decipher. "We've got all night." I leaned back, scanning the table. Juniper fiddled with her napkin, while my eldest son, Michael, kept glancing between Henry and Elaine. My middle two, Claire and Jack, avoided eye contact entirely, staring down at their plates like they were suddenly fascinating. "Is there a reason Henry's here?" I asked, keeping my tone neutral. Elaine's smile widened. "Oh, Henry's been such an important part of my life. I thought it was only fitting he joined us tonight." Henry cleared his throat, trying to add something to the conversation. Yeah. It's been great working together on a few things." "Working together?" I echoed, raising an eyebrow. "On what?" Elaine reached over, placing a hand on Henry's forearm. "Oh, you'll find out soon enough," she said, her tone laced with something almost playful. The discomfort in the room was palpable. I looked at the kids, searching their faces for any clue as to what was going on, but they avoided my gaze. Something wasn't right. The waiter arrived, breaking the tension momentarily as he poured wine into my glass and asked if we were ready to order. I waved him off, needing a moment to process the bizarre dynamic unfolding in front of me. Elaine tilted her head, studying me. "You seem tense, darling. Relax. This is a celebration." "Is it?" I asked, my voice calm, but my chest tightening. She leaned forward, her smile growing colder. "Oh, it definitely is. A celebration of transitions." "Transitions?" I repeated, my patience beginning to wear thin. Elaine sighed dramatically, setting her glass down with a faint clink. "You've always been so slow on the uptake, haven't you? But I suppose that's part of your charm." "Elaine," I said, my tone firm. "What's going on?" The private dining room was quiet except for the occasional clink of glasses and muffled conversations from the main restaurant. The tension in the air was thick enough to cut with a knife. I glanced around the table, trying to piece together why this dinner felt more like a trap than a celebration. Elaine leaned back in her chair, swirling her wine glass lazily. "So," she began, her voice cutting through the silence. "What's everyone been up to today?" Her tone was light, but her eyes held an edge. Michael, my eldest, shifted uncomfortably. "Just work, Mom. Nothing special." "Work," Elaine repeated, smirking. "Always so busy, just like your father." Her gaze slid to me, and there was that look, condescending, smug, like she was in on a joke I didn't understand. Henry, sitting diagonally across from me, cleared his throat. "Yeah, Mike, you got your dad's work ethic for sure." He chuckled and took a sip of his drink, avoiding eye contact with me. Something was definitely off. I studied Henry, trying to make sense of why he was even here. He'd been my best friend for decades, but lately, there'd been a distance. He'd missed our last few golf games, brushed off my calls, and now Here he was, sitting at my family's anniversary dinner, acting like he belonged. "Henry," I said, breaking the awkward silence. "Good to see you. I wasn't expecting you tonight." He shifted in his seat, offering a weak smile. Elaine thought it'd be a nice surprise. I turned to Elaine, who was sipping her wine with an air of triumph. "Is that right?" I asked. "Oh, yes," she said, setting her glass down. "Henry's been such an important part of our lives. I thought it was only fitting he joined us for this special occasion." Her words hung in the air, and I noticed the kids exchanging nervous glances. Juniper was fiddling with her napkin, Claire stared at her plate, and Jack avoided looking at anyone altogether. They knew something I didn't. I leaned back in my chair, forcing myself to stay calm. "Well, it's always good to see old friends," I said, keeping my tone neutral, "even if it's unexpected." Elaine smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "Speaking of unexpected," she said, pulling a folder from her bag and sliding it across the table toward me. "I've been meaning to give you this for a while." "What is it?" I asked, my hand hovering over the folder. "Go on," she said, her tone dripping with mock sweetness. "Open it." I flipped open the folder, my stomach sinking as I read the words at the top. Petition for dissolution of marriage. Divorce papers. For a moment, the world seemed to tilt, but I forced myself to stay composed. I looked up at her, meeting her gaze. "What's this?" I asked, keeping my voice steady. Elaine leaned forward, her smile widening. "It's your retirement, darling," she said, her voice sickly sweet. "You've been such a good provider. Paid off the house, sent the kids to college, gave me the life I deserve. But I'm afraid your services are no longer required." Henry let out a low chuckle, and my eyes snapped to him. He leaned back in his chair, looking far too comfortable. "Yeah," he said, grinning. "Thanks for covering the bills while I kept her satisfied." My fists clenched under the table, but I didn't react. "Not yet. Is that right?" I said, my voice calm. Elaine smirked, clearly enjoying herself. "Oh, yes? Did you really think I married you for love? You were a backup plan, nothing more. And now I've got everything I need. Henry and I can finally be together." She leaned back in her chair, folding her arms. "Oh, and one more thing. Henry's the real father of your kids." The words hit me like a freight train. I glanced at the kids, who sat frozen, their faces a mix of shock and horror. They hadn't known. That much was clear. "Mom, what the hell are you talking about?" Michael demanded, his voice shaking. Elaine turned to him, her expression softening slightly. "Oh, sweetie, don't act so surprised. You've always been smart. You had to have figured it out by now." Michael stared at her, his jaw clenched. "You're telling us Dad's not our real father? After everything he's done for us? After everything you've put him through?" Elaine rolled her eyes. "Don't be so dramatic, Michael. It's not like he didn't benefit too. He got to play the hero, the provider, the family man. It worked out for everyone." Claire slammed her hand on the table, her face red with anger. "How could you do this to him? To us?" Elaine sighed, clearly annoyed. "Oh, please. Don't act like I'm the villain here. Life is messy. Things happen. You'll understand when you're older." Henry, who had been silent for a moment, decided to chime in. "Look, kids, your mom and I—" "Shut up," Michael snapped, cutting him off. "You don't get to talk. You're just as bad as she is." The room fell into a tense silence, the weight of Elaine's betrayal pressing down on all of us. I took a deep breath, forcing myself to stay composed. "So, this is your big plan?" I said, addressing Elaine. "Divorce me, take everything I've worked for, and ride off into the sunset with him?" Elaine smiled, unbothered by the tension. "That's about the size of it, yes. And honestly, you should be thanking me. I'm giving you a chance to move on, to find someone who actually appreciates you." Henry chuckled again, and something in me snapped. I stood abruptly, the chairs scraping loudly against the floor. Everyone went silent, their eyes on me. "You think this is funny?" I asked, my voice low and dangerous. Henry stopped laughing, his smug expression faltering. "Look, man, I said, cutting him off. "Don't say another word." Elaine sighed, clearly unimpressed. "Oh, stop being so dramatic. This is why I never told you sooner. You always overreact." I stared at her, my mind racing. The anger was there, simmering just below the surface, but I couldn't let it take over. Not yet. I needed to stay calm, to think this through. I hope you enjoyed your little show, I said, looking between Elaine and Henry, because it's the last time you'll ever catch me off guard. With that, I grabbed the divorce papers, tore them in half, and tossed them onto the table. You think you've won, I said, my voice steady. But this isn't over. Not by a long shot. Their laughter was a sharp, piercing sound that filled the private dining room, bouncing off the walls and settling like a heavy weight on my chest. I could feel their mockery in every chuckle, every sneer. But I stayed eerily calm, my expression betraying none of the storm brewing inside. You done? I asked, my voice steady and low. Elaine leaned in closer, her smirk growing wider. Not quite, she said, her tone dripping with venom. One more thing. Did you honestly believe I ever loved you? Please. She rolled her eyes and took another sip of her wine. You were just a stepping stone. A walking ATM, convenient, reliable, boring. Henry leaned back his chair, crossing his arms. Pathetic, he added with a laugh. Honestly, I don't know how you didn't see it sooner. You were always so trusting, so naive. It's almost sad. For a moment, the table was silent, save for the faint hum of the restaurant's ambience outside our little bubble of betrayal. I felt all eyes on me, my kids, stunned and uncomfortable. Elaine, smug and confident. Henry, oozing arrogance. I let the silence hang, let them stew in their false sense of victory. Then I smiled. It wasn't forced or hollow. It was genuine. Well, that's funny, I said, pulling my phone out of my pocket. I held it up for them to see, my thumb hovering over the screen. Because there's something you might want to see. Elaine's smirk faltered. What are you talking about? I tapped the screen, and the restaurant's massive television on the far wall lit up. At first, it was just black, and then it began a montage of images and videos that I had spent months gathering. Elaine's mugshot from her arrest 15 years ago. Prison records detailing her charges for fraud and theft. Clips from her old life as an adult film star, seedy and undeniable. Gasps rippled through the room. Diners at nearby tables turned to watch, their quiet conversations forgotten. Elaine's face went white, her confidence evaporating in an instant. What the hell is this? She screamed, standing so abruptly her chair tipped over. Her wine glass slipped from her hand, shattering on the floor in a pool of deep red. I leaned back, calm as ever, and gestured to the screen. Oh, just a little highlight reel of your greatest hits, I said casually. You son of a... Elaine lunged across the table, reaching for my phone, but I was faster. I stood, holding it out of her reach as she scrambled after me, her desperation palpable. Turn it off, she shrieked, her voice cracking. Turn it off right now. The kids were frozen, their faces a mixture of shock, anger, and confusion. Michael, the eldest, was the first to speak. Mom, what the hell is this? Is this real? Elaine whirled around to face him, her expression panicked. It's not what it looks like, she stammered. I can explain. Explain what? Claire interrupted, her voice shaking. The mugshots? The prison time? Or the fact that you've been lying to all of us for years? Henry stood, his face red with embarrassment and anger. You're going to regret this, he growled, pointing a finger at me. You think you can humiliate us like this and get away with it? I turned to him, my smile fading. Sit down, Henry, I said evenly. This doesn't concern you. Not yet. He froze, his jaw tightening, but he didn't move. Elaine, meanwhile, was in full meltdown mode. She turned back to me, her hands shaking. You bastard, she spat. You had no right. No right? I repeated, stepping closer to her. My voice remained calm, but there was steel in it now. You sit here, at our anniversary dinner, and tell me I'm nothing but a stepping stone? A walking ATM? You think you can humiliate me in front of my family and walk away unscathed? Let me tell you something, Elaine, you don't get to decide how this ends. I do. The room fell silent, the weight of my words settling over everyone. Elaine opened her mouth to respond, but no words came out. For the first time in years, she was speechless. Michael stood, his hands clenched into fists. "Is it true?" he demanded, his voice trembling. "Are you really not our dad?" I turned to him, my expression softening. "We'll talk later," I said. "I promise." Elaine reached for him, but he stepped back, glaring at her. "Don't touch me," he said coldly. "You've done enough." Claire stood too, tears streaming down her face. "You lied to us," she said, her voice breaking. "You lied about everything." Juniper, the youngest, was still seated, her face pale. "Why, Mom?" she whispered. "Why would you do this?" Elaine crumbled, sinking back into her chair. She buried her face in her hands, sobbing. Henry hovered awkwardly, unsure of what to do. I turned to him, my smile returning. "Still feeling smug?" I asked. He glared at me, but he didn't respond. He knew better. I reached for the divorce papers Elaine had slid across the table earlier. Slowly, deliberately, I tore them in half, then in half again, letting the pieces flutter to the table. "You two deserve each other," I said, looking between Elaine and Henry. "Enjoy your new life. It's going to be a very public one from now on." Elaine looked up, her makeup streaked with tears. "Please," she begged, her voice barely a whisper. "Don't do this. Don't ruin everything." "Ruin everything?" I repeated, my tone incredulous. "You did that all on your own?" The silence in the room was so heavy you could feel its weight pressing against your chest. Elaine sat motionless, tears streaking her face, her once smug expression replaced by utter defeat. Henry avoided my gaze, his hands trembling slightly as he gripped the edge of the table. I was about to leave when Michael, my oldest son, stood abruptly, his chair scraping against the floor. "Wait, Dad," he said, his voice ice cold. "There's more." I paused, turning slowly to face him. "More?" I asked, my tone measured, though my curiosity was piqued. Michael nodded, his face grim. "Turns out Mom has another family. A whole other life." The room erupted. Claire gasped, her hands flying to her mouth. Juniper let out a choked sob, her head shaking as if trying to deny the truth. Jacob, the second eldest, stood as well, his fists clenched at his sides. Elaine's head snapped up, her face pale as a ghost. "Michael, no," she cried, her voice raw and desperate. Don't what?" Michael shot back, his voice rising. "Don't tell Dad the truth? Don't let him know that this isn't even the worst of it." I stepped closer, my heart pounding in my chest. "Michael," I said, keeping my voice steady, "what are you talking about?" He hesitated, glancing at his siblings, then at me. "A few months ago," he began, his voice quieter now, "I overheard Mom on the phone. She didn't know I was listening. She was talking to someone, a man." Elaine buried her face in her hands, muttering, "Please stop." Michael ignored her, his gaze fixed on me. I started digging around, and I found emails, text messages, photos. He swallowed hard. "She's been living a double life, Dad. She's got another family, another husband, and kids." The words hit like a freight train. For a moment, I could hardly breathe. "You're serious?" I finally managed to say, my voice low. He nodded. "Dead serious. I've got proof." Michael pulled out his phone, tapping rapidly before handing it to me. On the screen were photos, Elaine with a man I didn't recognize, standing in front of a modest suburban house, smiling like she didn't have a care in the world. In another photo, she stood with two children, younger than my own, one of them bearing an uncanny resemblance to her. The blood drained from my face as I handed the phone back. "How long?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Michael hesitated. From what I could piece together, about 10 years. 10 years. A decade of lies layered on top of the betrayal I'd already uncovered. My fists clenched at my sides as I turned to Elaine, who sat slumped in her chair, defeated. "Is this true?" I demanded. She didn't answer, her shoulders shaking as she sobbed into her hands. "Answer me," I shouted, my voice echoing through the room. "Yes," she finally screamed, looking up with red-rimmed eyes. "It's true, okay? Are you happy now? Is that what you wanted to hear?" The room fell into stunned silence. Claire stood, her face twisted in anger and pain. "How could you?" she demanded. "How could you lie to us like this? To Dad?" Juniper shook her head, tears streaming down her face. "I don't even know who you are anymore." Jacob, who had remained silent up until now, slammed his fist on the table. "You're disgusting," he spat, glaring at Elaine. "You've destroyed everything." I turned to Henry, who sat frozen, his face ashen. "Still feeling smug, Henry?" I asked, my voice dripping with contempt. He stammered. "I didn't know about this. I swear, I had no idea." "Save it," I snapped, cutting him off. "You're just as guilty as she is. You think your betrayal hurts any less because you didn't know about her other betrayal? Don't kid yourself." Henry looked down, unable to meet my gaze. I reached for the divorce papers still in tatters on the table. "You two deserve each other," I said, throwing the scraps toward Elaine. "Enjoy your life of lies. I'm done with both of you." Elaine tried to stand, reaching out toward me. "Please don't go," she begged, her voice breaking. "We can fix this. I'll end things with the other family." Stop," I said firmly, raising a hand. "Don't insult me by pretending you want to fix this. You've had your chance, 31 years of chances, and this is how you chose to use them." She fell to her knees, gripping the edge of the table for support. "Please, I'm begging you," she sobbed. "Don't leave me like this." I stepped back, shaking my head. "You didn't leave me much of a choice, Elaine." I looked at my children, their faces a mix of anger and heartbreak. "We'll figure this out," I said, my voice softer now. "But this," I gestured to Elaine and Henry, "this ends here." Michael stepped forward, his jaw set. "We're with you, Dad." Claire nodded. "Me too." Juniper sniffled, wiping her eyes. "We all are." Jacob glanced at Elaine one last time, then turned away. "Let's go," he said. I gave Elaine and Henry one final look, my expression a mixture of pity and disgust. "Good luck," I said, my voice cold. "You're going to need it." And with that, I walked out of the restaurant, my kids following close behind. The sound of Elaine's sobs and Henry's panicked muttering faded into the background as we stepped into the night. For the first time in years, I felt a strange sense of freedom, a bittersweet relief that despite the pain, the lies, and the betrayal, I was finally free from the web they had spun around me. The morning after the disastrous dinner, the fallout began to take shape. I sat in my living room, sipping coffee, feeling the weight of the silence that filled the house. For the first time in years, Elaine wasn't here, and neither was the pretense of a happy marriage. My phone buzzed on the table, pulling me from my thoughts. It was Michael. "Hey, Dad," he said when I answered, his voice heavy. "You doing okay?" I nodded, though he couldn't see me. "As okay as I can be, given the circumstances." He hesitated before speaking again. "Look, Claire and I have been talking. We want to come over later today, just to check on you. Maybe have dinner together?" A small smile tugged at my lips. "I'd like that." By midday, news of Elaine and Henry's disgrace had started to spread. It wasn't hard to imagine why. Between the public spectacle at the restaurant and the information I'd carefully leaked, their downfall was inevitable. The first call came from an old acquaintance of Elaine's. "Did you hear?" she asked, her voice a mix of shock and schadenfreude. "Elaine's mugshot is all over social media. People are saying she's been leading a double life." I kept my response measured. "I've heard bits and pieces." By the afternoon, Elaine herself called. Her number flashed on my screen, and for a moment I debated letting it go to voicemail. Curiosity got the better of me. "What do you want, Elaine?" I asked, my tone flat. Her voice was shaky. I need help." I let out a bitter laugh. "Help? You must be kidding." "Please," she pleaded. "People are harassing me. My boss fired me this morning after seeing those videos. Henry's wife has kicked him out, and we have nowhere to go." "Not my problem," I said curtly. "Come on, you can't just," she started, but I cut her off. "You don't get to ask me for anything, Elaine. You made your choices. Now you live with them." I hung up before she could respond. When my kids arrived that evening, the mood was somber but supportive. Claire set the table while Juniper helped me in the kitchen, stealing glances at me with a worried expression. "You sure you're okay, Dad?" Juniper asked softly. "I'll be fine," I assured her, though I wasn't entirely convinced myself. It's just going to take some time. Dinner was simple, but comforting. For the first time in what felt like forever, the conversation around the table was honest. We talked about Elaine, about her betrayal, and about how to move forward. Michael was the first to speak up. "We're cutting ties with her," he said firmly. "She's toxic. She lied to all of us." Claire nodded in agreement. "I don't see how we can forgive her after everything." Juniper looked hesitant. "I don't know. She's still our mom." Jacob, who had been quiet until now, spoke up. "She stopped being our mom the moment she decided we weren't good enough to know the truth." I watched them, my chest tight with a mix of sadness and pride. They were grappling with a reality no one should have to face, but they were handling it with a maturity that astounded me. Meanwhile, Elaine and Henry's lives continued to crumble. The next day, I received a call from Henry. His voice was strained, almost desperate. "Look, man," he began, "I know I messed up, but can't we put this behind us? For old time's sake." I let out a cold laugh. "Old time sake? You mean the decades you spent betraying me?" "I don't think so, Henry. I'm sorry, okay? I didn't think it would end up like this," he said, his tone bordering on panic. "No, you didn't think at all," I replied. "And now you're paying for it. Goodbye, Henry." I ended the call, feeling a sense of satisfaction I hadn't expected. In the weeks that followed, Elaine and Henry became pariahs. Friends they'd once charmed turned their backs on them. Elaine's second family, the one Michael had uncovered, refused to have anything to do with her after learning the truth. She had burned every bridge she'd ever built. One afternoon, as I was going through old photo albums, I found a picture from our wedding day. Elaine was smiling brightly, her eyes full of promises she would never keep. I stared at the photo for a long time before tearing it in half and tossing it into the trash. That chapter of my life was over. Gradually, I began to rebuild. My kids became my greatest source of strength, rallying around me in a way I hadn't expected. We spent more time together, weekend dinners, movie nights, even a family trip to the mountains. It wasn't always easy, but it was healing. One evening, as we sat around a campfire during the trip, Claire turned to me. "You know, Dad, you deserve to be happy." I smiled at her. "I am happy, Claire. About you guys?" She shook her head. "That's not what I mean. I mean you deserve someone who appreciates you. Someone who loves you for who you are." Juniper chimed in. "She's right. You shouldn't give up on love just because Mom turned out to be." "Well, Mom," I looked at my kids, their faces glowing in the firelight. For the first time since that fateful night at the restaurant, I allowed myself to consider the possibility. Maybe they were right. Maybe there was still room for love in my life. It started at the farmer's market on a crisp Saturday morning. The air was cool, the smell of fresh bread and blooming flowers wafting through the stalls. I wasn't looking for anything, or anyone for that matter. But life has a way of surprising you when you least expect it. I was inspecting a jar of honey when a soft voice interrupted my thoughts. "Careful with that one. The lid's a bit loose." I turned to see a woman with kind brown eyes and a gentle smile. She was holding a small basket of herbs and fruits, her presence radiating warmth. "Thanks for the heads up," I said, setting the jar down carefully. "I wouldn't want to end my shopping trip sticky." She chuckled, and the sound was like music. "Well, that would definitely ruin the morning." We chatted briefly about honey, of all things. Her name was Lily, and she owned a small bakery in town. She invited me to stop by sometime, and before I knew it, I found myself agreeing. As she walked away, I realized I was smiling, really smiling for the first time in months. A week later, I stood outside her bakery, nervously smoothing down my shirt. The sign above the door read Lily's Hearth, and the smell of freshly baked bread and cinnamon wafted out every time the door opened. Gathering my courage, I stepped inside. Lily was behind the counter, arranging a tray of pastries. When she saw me, her face lit up. "You made it." "I did," I said, feeling unexpectedly shy. "This place smells incredible. Wait until you try something," she said with a wink, sliding a plate of cookies across the counter. "On the house. Call it a baker's welcome." I laughed, taking a bite of a cookie. It was perfect, soft, buttery, with just the right amount of sweetness. "You might have just ruined every other cookie for me." "Good," she said playfully. "Keeps you coming back?" As weeks turned into months, Lily and I grew closer. She had a way of making everything feel lighter, simpler. She didn't pry into my past, but she listened when I chose to share. And when I told her about Elaine, about the betrayal and the fallout, she didn't judge or pity me. She just understood. You didn't deserve that, she said one evening as we walked along the river. The setting sun cast a golden glow on the water. But you're here now, and that's what matters. Her words stayed with me. For so long, I'd felt defined by what Elaine had done, by the lies, the humiliation, the loss. But with Lily, I started to see that I was more than that. I wasn't just a man who'd been betrayed. I was a man who had survived, who had rebuilt, who was capable of loving and being loved again. Meanwhile, Elaine and Henry's lives had taken a nosedive. The humiliation of their exposure had followed them everywhere. Elaine struggled to find work, her reputation in tatters. Henry's charm had worn thin, and the cracks in their relationship began to show. One evening, I got a call from a number I didn't recognize. Against my better judgment, I answered. "Hello. Hi, it's Elaine." Her voice was hesitant, a shadow of the arrogance it once held. "What do you want?" I asked, keeping my tone neutral. I wanted to apologize," she said, her words rushed and desperate. "I know I hurt you, and I know I don't deserve forgiveness, but I can't live like this anymore. Please, can we talk?" I took a deep breath, the memories of her betrayal flashing through my mind. "Elaine, I spent years giving you everything I had. You threw it all away for your own selfishness. I've moved on, and you need to do the same." "But no," I said firmly. "This is the life you chose. Now you have to live with it." I hung up, feeling a strange sense of closure. My relationship with Lily blossomed. She met my kids, who were cautious at first but quickly warmed to her. She had a way of making people feel at ease, of turning even the simplest moments into something special. One evening, as we sat on her porch, sharing a bottle of wine, she turned to me. "Do you ever think about what's next for us?" I looked at her, her face illuminated by the soft glow of the porch light. "I do," I admitted, "and for the first time in a long time, I feel like I have something to look forward to." She smiled, leaning her head against my shoulder. "Good, because I think we make a pretty great team." By the end of that year, I had found a peace I hadn't thought possible. Lily and I bought a house together, a cozy place with a garden she loved to tend. My kids visited often, their laughter filling the space in a way that reminded me of what really mattered. Elaine and Henry were a distant memory. Occasionally, I'd hear about their struggles through the grapevine. Henry leaving her, Elaine scraping by on odd jobs, but I didn't dwell on it. Their misery was their own doing, and I had no interest in letting it touch my new life. One evening, as I stood in the garden watching Lily plant tulips, she looked up at me and smiled. "What are you thinking about?" "Just how lucky I am," I said, walking over to her. "To have found you, to have this life." She stood, brushing dirt off her hands, and kissed me softly. "Well, you deserve it." And for the first time in a long time, I truly believed it. The past was behind me, and the future was mine to create. This was my new beginning, and I wasn't looking back.